On August 17th, 2024, the real estate industry will institute the largest change in the real estate industry in how homes will be bought and sold since the times of Abraham Lincoln.
Welcome back. Going into this weekend, a real estate lawsuit settlement sends shockwaves through the real estate world, and decades-long policies that help set agent commissions. Under the terms of the settlement, the National Association of Realtors not only agreed to pay $418 million, but also agreed to eliminate the 6% realtor commissions.
To save some money buying or selling a house, a lawsuit settlement by the National Association of Realtors is getting rid of the standard 6% commission for realtors.
What's that mean? Fox 11's Christina Gonzalez explains.
In the spring of 2024, the National Association of Realtors, commonly known as NAR, settled a $418 million lawsuit regarding the changes that I'm about to talk about. The National Association of Realtors announced that it has reached an agreement to end its lengthy and costly fight with home sellers who have claimed the organization is at the center of a conspiracy to inflate commissions and unfairly force sellers to compensate the buyer's agents. This NAR settlement is not just about money and damages. It is creating a whole new rules and regulations moving on starting August 17th. The new rules and regulations will dictate who will pay the commissions to the seller's agent and the buyer's agent, and will the buyers have to pay the buyer's agent a commission. So let's dig into it. These significant changes will affect the buyers, the sellers, the buyer's agents, and the seller's agent. The whole industry will be impacted in a big way. In this video, I'm going to explain to you step by step what your options are if you're a seller, if you're a buyer, and also talk about how the real estate agents will get paid. And it's definitely not the way traditionally that has been paid. Many of the real estate agents who conduct business today, whether selling or buying or working with investors, are actually realtors. So what is National Association of Realtors? The National Association of Realtors, the voice of real estate, is America's largest trade association representing 1.5 million members, including NAR's institute, societies, and councils involved in all aspects of the residential and commercial real estate industries. Once you become a member of NAR, you pledge to their code of ethics and the code of conduct as a realtor. Also, by becoming a member of NAR, you have access to the multiple listing service. Now, the NAR does not run the multiple listing service, what we call the MLS. The MLS is run by the local board of local association of the board, the state association of the board, which are governed by NAR. So to have access to the multiple listing service, we have to become members of NAR. Most brokers, most agents are members, and one of the main benefit is access to the multiple listing service, which has all the listings displayed, the price, the pictures, the terms and conditions, at least some of the terms and conditions upfront, so the buyers know upfront and the buyer's agent and listing agents know upfront what is required to sell these homes. So having access to the multiple listing service is a big advantage, but following the conduct and ethics is also a big deal for us realtors. So we can all conduct business together and cohesively. As an example, I am in Anaheim Hills, Orange County, California. So I am a member of our local board, which is the Pacific West Association of Realtors. They have their regulations and follow the CAR regulations, which is the California Association of Realtors. And California Association of Realtors follow the rules and regulations of NAR. So basically, NAR controls and puts forth a lot of rules and regulations that the states has to follow, and the states put out rules and regulations based on the county they're in. So there's a big chain of rules and regulations going on out there, and we as agents has to follow those based on our local boards, state boards, and the National Association of Realtor regulations. It is also important to know that NAR does not set the rules and regulations regarding commissions. Commissions are not fixed, and commissions are fixed by the brokers and the sellers, not the National Association of Realtors. They have guidelines, but they do not set the rules or the amount of commissions. As I mentioned earlier, commissions are set by the consumers and their agents. Typically, what was happening until now, and this will change starting August 17th, typically what happened was if a seller hires a listing agent, what we call the seller's agent, and let's say the seller pays 6% commission to the listing agent, then the listing agent was sharing that commission with the buyer's agent. So in this case, the 6% was split 3% to the seller's agent or the seller's broker, and then 3% to the buyer's broker. Once the brokers got the 3% commission, the brokers split that further with their agents, and the split between the agents and the brokers is also negotiable. On the listing side and on the buyer's agent, they split their commissions with their broker, which was also negotiable. It could be a 50-50 split between the agent and the brokers, or it could be a 60-40 split, or whatever split that was. That is confidential, but it's all negotiable. So one of the biggest changes coming starting August 17th due to this huge and massive class action lawsuit is that the sellers who paid the seller's agent and the seller's agent paid the buyer's agent, that is going to go away. Sellers can no longer legally pay any commissions to the buyer's agent. So what is the change? The change is, and this is very astonishing to the buyers, I've talked to many buyers and seen the reaction from the discussion that we've had. A lot of the buyers are shocked now because moving forward, the buyer will have to pay the buyer's agent commission. In other words, if you are looking for a house, let's say you're looking for a house for $500,000 and I'm going to be your agent, then the first thing we as agents are going to ask you, the buyer, is that you have to sign a buyer-broker agreement. That means you're going to work with me. We have that in writing. And we have to negotiate how much commission you, the buyer, will pay us directly, whether it's going to be 2%, 3% of the purchase price or a flat fee. So that's a huge change, and we are waiting to see anxiously what impact that'll have on the whole industry moving forward. According to NAR, beginning August 17th, 2024, an MLS participant working with a buyer will be required to enter into a written agreement with the buyer prior to touring a home, including both in-person and live virtual tours. So the two agreements will have to work for the buyers to work with the buyer's agent. One is that you have to have a written agreement. Now these agreements could be for 1 day to show homes, could be for a week that you're going to show homes, or could be for 90 days that you're going to be showing them homes in a certain area. The second agreement that you have to have in writing is who is going to pay the buyer's agent, which in this case, the buyer will have to pay the buyer's agent. You have to negotiate with them how much you're going to pay. Are you going to pay them 3% commission, 2% commission, or 1% or a flat fee? So part of the 2019 lawsuit to NAR was that the seller did not know how much the seller's agent were paying the buyer's agent or the buyer side. And the other side of the lawsuit alleges that when the buyer's agent were showing homes to the buyers, they were showing them homes based on the compensation they were going to get. So moving forward, when buyer's agent or even listing agent shows home, they will no longer see in the multiple listing service how much commission is offered up front. That whole commission thing is deleted totally. So the seller's agent can no longer offer buyer's agent any commission. It will not be in the multiple listing service at all. So that'll change the way homes will be shown moving on. The burden now, or the responsibility now, starting August 17th, is that the buyers will have to pay the buyer's agent, and that'll put a lot of pressure on the buyers. So let's take an example. If a buyer was looking for a $500,000 house and they were putting 10% down, which is $50,000, and let's assume that there was 3% in closing cost and deposits. You have escrow fees, title fees, or attorney fees. You have property tax deposits. You have insurance deposits. You have a lot of miscellaneous fees. So let's assume that came out to 3%. So in other words, if the buyer wanted to buy that $500,000 house, they have to come up with the 10%, which is $50,000, and they have to come up with additional 3%, which is $15,000, for a total of $65,000 to purchase that home. That was the typical scenario. Moving on, August 17, 2024, there is an additional amount we have to add to it. So let's say the buyer agrees to pay 3% to the buyer's agent. So now, if the buyer agrees in writing to pay the buyer's agent a 3% commission, let's say you do find a house at $500,000 in the location that you like, the floor plan that you like, in the neighborhood that you like. So now you as a buyer will pay the 10% down, which is $50,000. You will pay the 3% in closing cost, that's an approximate, that is $15,000. And now in addition, you are going to pay $15,000 in commission to the buyer's agent. So your total cost to buy a house went up from $65,000 until August 17th. Now it'll be $80,000 after August 17th because you have the $50,000 down, the $15,000 in closing cost, and $15,000 in commission. So that just made buying a home a lot more difficult, because I've been selling homes for over 25 years. And one of the biggest thing that stops buyers from buying a home is the down payment, coming up with the down payment. And now we're adding another 2%, 3% on top of that. That's going to make it even difficult to buyers to buy. So there will be less buyers being able to buy homes unless they negotiate something with the seller to pay the buyer's commission. So now there comes an item in the multiple listing service called the concessions. And let's talk about the concessions. But before I talk about the concessions, I wanted to let you know that there are ethical agents and unethical agents. Some of the agents work for commission. They only work for commissions. They're only looking for their interest. Skill agents, experienced agents, professional agents, agents that are referred to you are skill agents. They work for your benefit, whether you're a buyer or a seller. They don't look at the commission. Now this whole thing changes, and most of the agents are buyer's agent because it's easy to sell a home. So now that this situation has come up or is coming up in a few weeks, you have to work with smart agents, skill agents, updated agents. And if you are looking for an agent, I've been in business for 25 years and I have a database of all the top agents nationwide. And if you want to be referred to an agent who is skilled and experienced, click on the link below. It's in the comment section, the first comment section, and I'll be glad to call you, talk to you what you need, what you're looking for, and based on that, I will refer to you a great agent. So feel free to fill out that form. So let us fast forward to August 17th. So when you are deciding to sell or even to buy, you have to sit down with your agent and talk to them on how they're going to work, how much compensation they're going to pay. Are they charging you 2%, 3%? And see how strong they are in negotiating their own commissions and their own terms and conditions. After all, if I'm an agent and if I cannot defend my own commission, my own self-worth, and reduce my commissions to a flat fee or a lower commission, how strong can I be to negotiate your price and your terms and conditions when I'm selling your home or if I'm helping you buy a home? I mentioned to you earlier that the seller does not have to pay the buyer's agent anymore. So typically they used to pay 5 or 6% and they used to be split. But if you look at this chart number 9, you can see that when the seller's agent signs a listing agreement with the seller, of course they fill out the price and the terms and conditions. But if you look at item number C1, it shows that the compensation to seller's broker, and it could be a percentage or a flat fee. But the second item, C2, it says that additional compensation to seller's broker if buyer is unrepresented. That could be a percentage of the selling price or a flat fee. So what's going to happen is, because the seller's agent cannot pay the buyer, and if a buyer walks into an open house, calls the listing agent, and the buyer is not represented, then the seller's agent can get the listing side commission and ask for the additional commission that they have to pay to the buyers. So it gets a little bit complicated, but everything is changing. Our forms have already changed, and these forms, at least this is in California with my PWR board, we are going to start using this form August 17th. So the changes are, there's no commissions to the buyer's agent from the listing side, and the buyer's agent has to be paid by the buyers, and the buyers have to sign a compensation form or a commission form with the buyer, how much the buyer is going to pay the buyer's agent. So those are two major changes going on, and that takes effect very shortly. There are other changes coming along as far as compensation goes. So what's going to happen is, when a buyer's agent, like let's say for me, when I write an offer for my buyer, I could write in the offer that the seller pays a compensation to the buyer. Let's say it could be 2% or 3% compensation to the buyer, for which if I had an agreement with the buyer to pay me 3%, that compensation that the seller pays to the buyer, the buyer could pay me that compensation. So in other words, the buyer does not have to come up with the money from their pocket, but because the seller is giving compensation to the buyer, and in return, the buyer is paying the compensation to the buyer's agent, that could make things easier. Again, everything is negotiable. It could be 3%, it could be 2%, it could be a flat fee, but these things have to be negotiated. The other thing to keep in mind is that, let's say, as a scenario, and this is one of the regulations that are stipulated to us as agents, is that let's say I have a buyer-broker agreement signed with the buyer, and I said, you know what, I will take 2%. For whatever reason, I took 2%. And then let's say I showed them a house, found them a house, and got our offer accepted. And in the compensation, where the sellers can legally compensate buyers, let's say the seller was real nice and was really willing to find a buyer and had offered 2.5% compensation to the buyers. So now when we open escrow and close escrow, the seller is going to compensate 2.5% to the buyer. And because I had an agreement to get paid 2% from the buyer will pay me 2% as my fees or commissions. So the balance of the 0.5%, the buyer gets to keep that. So that's an advantage to the buyer. So one of the biggest changes when it comes to multiple listing service and commissions is that, as I mentioned earlier, before, buyer's agent could see what the compensation was or the commission was, and based on that we showed homes, or at least the unethical agent showed homes that way. Moving forward, the buyer's agent will not know what the compensation is upfront, so it's all going to be negotiable. Although, if you look at this chart number 10, if you look over here just about list and original price $999,888, they could have added a concession in price. In this example, and because it's not August 17th yet, the seller has not put in an amount, but moving forward, that may have an amount there. It could be $10,000, it could be 2% of the purchase price or 5% of the purchase price, whatever it is, it will be in there. So if it is entered into the multiple listing service ahead of time, that's an advantage to the buyer's agent and the buyer. And if it's not listed in there ahead of time, the buyer's agent on behalf of the buyer could ask the seller to pay some compensation. So there is some leeway when it comes to getting paid from the buyer to the buyer's agent, and the buyer could get the money from the seller if the seller is willing to negotiate, seller is willing to sell this house to the buyer. It all depends on the terms and conditions and the price the seller is getting. So things are changing drastically already. Selling a home, working with buyers and working with sellers is no easy task. Home selling is a commission-based business. You only get paid if you sell something. It has been very difficult. And these changes from the lawsuit is going to make a significant change. What that means is the market has slowed down since 2021 because of the challenges of the inflation and the high interest rate and the higher home prices. A lot of agents have already gone. If you look at this chart 10A, it shows NAR membership continues to slide in 2024. The most impacted people from this lawsuit are not going to be agents or not going to be sellers. It's going to be the buyers. The buyers pool has also been shrinking. Yes, realtors pool has been shrinking because it's a tough business, but a lot of the buyers could not afford to buy homes, especially in the last 2 or 3 years, because the interest rates went up, inflation is up, gas prices are up, and home prices are up. So the affordability has been affected drastically. Now, when we add compensation and other fees coming up, that makes it even more difficult for the buyers to buy a house. So they will be the most impacted, I think, moving on. As I mentioned earlier many times, you as a buyer, when you want to see a property and you have to find an agent, because all homes has to be shown through agents, whether it's a buyer's agent or directly the listing agent, you as a buyer will have to sign a written buyer broker agreement for about a week or 2 weeks or 3 months to show you homes and find you homes. And when they find you a home, you're going to have to pay them a compensation or a commission that puts a damper on your affordability and your challenges to buying a house. Not that it is already challenging already. One of the drawbacks or one of the other drawbacks or dilemma that the buyers are going to have is, let's say your buyer's agent showed you 3 or 4 or 5 homes and you find one that you love. Out of the 4 or 5, you found one and you love the house, but the seller is not offering any compensation to you and you have agreed to pay your agent 3% commission. And if nothing works out between the buyer's agent, the seller, and you, that house you will have to pass and walk away. These scenarios are going to happen, and it's going to make it even more difficult for buyers to find a house that they like, and they're going to have to walk away from some of the homes that they cannot afford to pay the buyer's agent commission, or the numbers just don't work out overall. I mentioned briefly the dilemma of affordability pre-August 17th, and I strongly believe that after August 17th, the affordability index of home buyers is going to become even worse. Let's look at this chart. It shows the home affordability in the US by state. If you look at California, the affordability index is only 10.56%. That's the number of people who can afford to buy a house in California. The median home price in California is $800,000, I believe. Let's look at some other state. Texas, the affordability index is 19%. In Nebraska, it's 24.45%. So the affordability index is already low according to this chart. I'm curious to see what will happen in 2025. That affordability numbers will drop even further. That means less and less buyers will be able to buy the home that they really want to. The whole real estate industry is going to start evolving, not that it has not. The way the business will be conducted is going to change. The way the buyer conducts their dilemmas and how they get paid, how the sellers charge their agents, how the buyers pay their commissions to the buyers moving on, and how they come up with the additional funds. So this whole industry is changing, but there are good agents out there. There are good sellers out there. There are buyers like yourself that you can find a way to buy a property. So let's see how the industry evolves. Now that I've decluttered your mind, or hopefully you have decluttered some issues that you have, watch this video. It talks about decluttering your house if you're a seller and if you want to declutter. Thanks for watching. My name is Mike Patel. Sell smart so you can gain more.